Welcome back to the Northern Sentinels podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ayotte. On this episode, I'm joined by Fredericton's top cop, Chief Gary Forward. Gary was born into a military family and moved around in his youth before the Forwards settled in Fredericton. He spent his childhood playing sports and knew his career path from an early age. After high school, he attended the Atlantic Police Academy before joining the Fredericton Police Force. He enjoyed policing from the start, but it took time for him to find his professional footing and understand his place as a leader. He left the force in 2016 when he didn't see the organization heading in a direction he could support. This gave him a chance to do other things in law enforcement before coming back as a chief of police. Gary is a student of communicating with people and how to build organizations with purpose and shared vision. Thanks for supporting the show, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Gary Forward. Gary, great to meet you in person. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And I'm doing too many virtual podcasts these days, so the fact that we actually get to sit down in person is great.
Yeah,
it's a better connection. And you were telling me on the drive over here, you're in town for King's Coronation Medal presentation.
Yeah, just the opportunity to work with the Canadian Association Chiefs of Police as the NB representative, New Brunswick representative, and did that for about 2.5 years. So I think that the CACP has saw fit to perhaps recognize just all those representatives from across the country. So it's a great opportunity, a great pleasure, and an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's nice you get to bring your spouse too.
Yeah, she's out actually doing some shopping right now, and I'm a little concerned about that, to be honest.
I actually think this is one of the things that, people always point fingers at things that government doesn't do well. And this is something I think that we've got really right in Canada in terms of presenting honors and awards, having families involved, recognizing it because it's a big deal and it's something to be celebrated.
Well, I think it's certainly there's enough challenges in the world right now, and I don't believe anybody's immune to that. The opportunity for all of us to do our jobs and to be able to feel good about that, and at times when it's recognized, is nice. It's nothing more complicated than that. I said before on our drive over, I don't think that I've done anything to deserve any type of recognition. I think everybody is certainly doing everything they can to make their workplace, their community better. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to deny that it's not nice to be recognized for some of the efforts that have taken place.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, the people who are quick to say that I didn't do anything special and I don't think I necessarily merit this are normally the ones that do.
Oh,
yeah. So congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, before we sort of get into some other things about your life, it just sort of came into my mind. So do police forces have their own internal honors and awards systems as well? Like, what do you have as the chief of the Fredericton Police Force to be able to recognize people?
So with Fredericton Police Force, it has been a tradition, and it's been ongoing to have the annual awards ceremony. So we recognize everything from years of service to if there was life-saving efforts. We're putting something together right now that's going to include a Chief's Commendation coin where we'll recognize efforts with the community, officers and staff that have gone above and beyond in all kinds of different areas, whether that's work or whether they've actually reached out to partnerships and stakeholders to build things, whether that's in connection to education or health. Certainly, we want to look at everything that the community has to offer for newcomers. So there's been a lot of work by not only our officers, but all kinds of staff and individuals in the community that are building that. So one of the things that we're going to start bringing about, and I expect this to be in place within the next couple of months, is recognizing that type of outgoing, outstanding effort. And we'll be reaching out to our officers and staff, as well as city officials and community, to make nominations. And then we'll look at them annually and present that at the awards banquet.
How is that received?
It's right now pretty much a secret. Nobody really knows about it. And it's interesting that I'm sitting here talking about it on the podcast, but I think now's the time to start communicating what's coming. And we already have one officer, his wife, and her two friends that have done some extraordinary work to support Ukrainian families in Fredericton and outside the municipality as well as the province. They've been doing this quietly ever since the war started. And everything from helping with food to moving families to making sure that they have a roof over their head to something as simple as making sure they have a bed to sleep in. So this is one of the things that we're going to set the standard to, and I expect that once we get the coins in place, then they will be the first 4 recipients.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Those sort of programs, I think, are really meaningful to people. So good for you and the team for putting it in place. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Chief of the Fredericton Police Force, where's your family from? Like your mom and your dad, where did they grow up? Where are they from originally?
Well, Dad was born in Ontario. Mom was a New Brunswicker. Dad had ties to Newfoundland, but Dad was in the military. So he spent 26, 27 years in the military. And as a result, we lived in different parts of Atlantic Canada, mainly New Brunswick, also Quebec, Valcartier, Quebec. We spent about 9 years there growing up. So it's my mother, my father, my brother, and I. And then we spent a lot of time in Ontario as well, namely London, Ontario was a spot. So Dad was good at his job. He was a nice man, always helpful, always patient. And I think I've mentioned this to you before. I think my brother and I might have done better if we just had to listen to some of the suggestions that Dad had for us growing up. So he passed away a couple of years ago now. And, I find at times you're sitting thinking about some of the things that he had to say, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, Chris, I think it's fair to say there's at times I can't remember what I had for breakfast last week, but it's interesting. I found it extraordinary how he pops into my head at different times about stuff, little nuances, little sayings that he had years ago that seem to now pop in and make complete sense. So, this is one of those things where I think the older we get, it's an opportunity for us to maybe reflect, and if there are lessons to be learned, I'm glad I'm paying attention to them now, and that they're not lost forever.
So your dad was from Ontario, your mom was from New Brunswick. How did they meet?
I think Dad, through the military, ended up being in Gagetown. And as a young soldier, he went to a dance and where Mom was present. And as they say, the rest was pretty much history. So they married very, very young. I think Mom was 19 at the time and Dad was 21. And they had the family blessing even at that age, and they were the best of friends. So they managed to build a life. And growing up, he certainly, I would say they had a whole lot of money. He joined the military as a private. I think we all know what perhaps the salary would have been in those times, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. But he was able to rise up to the rank of a master warrant officer. And he had a good following under his command. And the stories about Dad were that he was always able to find the time to sit down and talk with people and listen to them, receive their input. And from that perspective, Dad really started to look at option development. And that was probably one of the lessons that he would try to suggest to my brother and I. Instead of walking into a room and figuring that you have all the answers, Dad would ask you to walk into a room, be the last one to talk, and be the first one to ask, well, what are the options before us? What is the pathway through to at minimum, putting something together that might actually fix the issue that we're talking about?
Where do you think he got that from?
You know what, Chris? I wish I knew the answer to that. I think with our respective exposure to people around us, our work experiences, I think Dad was just that type of communicator that valued listening over talking. And he, I think through his mannerisms, really helped people sort of come out of whether it was a shell or whether they had never been given the opportunity. He always used to say to me, Gary, people don't get mad at you for not taking their ideas. They get mad and frustrated if they don't have the opportunity to provide those ideas and input.
So true. Yeah.
So I think from that, and upon reflection, Dad always offered the opportunity for Jason and I to provide input, Jason being my brother. And, but I think what we were missing out was that we had come to conclusions quickly. And I think that's where I missed that particular, and it's an important part of that lesson or suggestion, was that not only do you have to listen, but your listening has to be sincere. It has to be genuine. You have to be willing to accept that regardless of level of and we're talking about a paramilitary organization with policing, Dad with military, it really is one of those things where those professions are often dealing with things that are immediately. You have to have that immediate response, making decisions quickly. And that's true. And I've never walked away from the fact that if we're at a critical situation and I need you to get to the back of the building, now it's not the time for us to sit down and have a 5-minute chat about that. I need you to get to the back of the building. At the same time, that is less than 1% of the totality of what, which means that the bulk of the time, if not all of the time, we have the opportunity to sit down and look at issues and figure what are the options that could ultimately support a resolve. And the other thing Dad used to say was, he said, stop being married to outcomes. The problem with being married to outcomes is that people become passionate about their ideas, and there's nothing wrong with passion. But when you're sitting in a group of people and they all have a vested interest in something, and if one person at the table is so passionate that they have blinders on, they're not willing to open up the opportunity to hear from others, I think that can become problematic. So he would be very calm about asking us to be careful about looking and equating outcomes to success. And need I say, positive outcomes.
Right.
So he instead talked about equating success to the due diligence of everybody. And if you have good people sitting in a room and everybody's on the same page to do their due diligence without ego interfering or tunnel vision, Dad would say that good people doing their due diligence, working toward a favorable outcome, that is where your success comes from. So the outcome itself, when something doesn't happen to our liking, then we simply need to regroup because ideally by listening to people, we would have figured out that the option that we came up with based on the information we had was by and large going to give us the best chance to resolve that issue. But we're not married to it. So when it doesn't go well, we can regroup. And maybe there's new pockets of information, new pieces that we can sit down and reevaluate. There's a real interesting author out there by the name of Ryan Holiday. And he's written a number of books, but, there's 3 in particular. Ego is the enemy, obstacle is the way, and stillness is the key. And obstacle is the way is a real interesting look at when you have something in front of you that seems, a problem and you can't get around it. Sitting down with people, doing due diligence, and developing options is always the way around anything. And consequently, you start looking at things that are happening on a daily basis as 1 out of 10s. And what I mean by that is, and what Dad always said was that you can look at any daily occurrence. And often people do. And this, I think, Chris, has been a challenge in a number of organizations and teams where you have one person that may be responding in a way that exhibits traits that are not unlike in the category of being parental or childlike, yet we're adults. So I think when others see people acting parental or they're acting like exhibiting childlike traits, it can become a real source of tension. And ultimately, toxicity grows in any type of team like that. So I think if everybody can stay in the adult, and the best way to do that is look at everything that's happening as a 1 out of 10. What I mean by that is if you look at what your 10 out of 10 is, and I certainly know what mine is, and I won't mention it here at the podcast, but I would invite everybody to consider what is your 10 out of 10? What traumatic, absolutely terrible incident that's happened in your life that you equate to a 10 out of 10. Then measure you going to work 2 months later and dealing with the simple fact that you didn't get the police car that you wanted or the zone that you wanted, and how ultimately people can respond to that in ways that are essentially childlike traits, where they throw a temper tantrum, or they get mad at their supervisor, or they express negativity to their coworkers over something that's nothing more than 1 out of 10. Now, this gets interesting when you can start taking 6 out of 10s and 8 out of 10s and still treat them as a 1 out of 10. The only difference being is that, yes, there are varying levels of critical things taking place, but it's your response ultimately that allows you to remain calm and in a position of listening, to hear the input from your team members that allows you to do your due diligence and ultimately find options that are going to give you the best chance, the best opportunity to resolve the situation before you.
Yeah. People struggle with right-sizing situations, with right-sizing conflict. It's a great point. And your father sounds like a wonderful man and mentor. And I'm curious, is your family moved around a bunch? How did your mother adapt to joining a military family, moving around? Because maybe a poor assumption, but I'm assuming that she was sort of born and raised in one spot, and then when she met and married your father, sort of on the road and moving around. So how did she find that lifestyle? How did she adapt to that?
Yeah, and actually, and for clarification, Mom spent, I should correct, Mom spent most of her life in New Brunswick, but was born in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, actually, and then came to New Brunswick. Her father as well was in the military.
Okay.
So they ended up in New Brunswick, and I think the good thing about Mom was, she was that level of support that the family needs. When Dad in the military is moving to different places, I don't recall Mom ever complaining too much. I think it was just one of the things that families at that time, especially in the military, probably saw as their duty. And I don't want to reduce it to that. Mom was a homemaker. She also had jobs where she was doing what she could to support the family. And from that perspective, like I said, they were a very good team. It was easy, coming home. My brother and I never wanted for anything, and at the same time, they allowed us to build some pretty strong family foundations about who we were and who we wanted to be. How did that lead to policing? It's a given that Dad being maybe in the military and kind of having, I've said Dad was he was a nice, calm man, but I think at the same time, if we weren't doing our homework or we were doing something that we shouldn't have done, I don't think my brother and I would have been looking forward to Dad coming home and having to have a chat with us. So there was always that, I think, healthy amount of respect. And if you want to call it fear, be my guest. But there was, Dad never had to raise his voice with us. It was generally that type of look. But Mom would always be the one behind Dad, smiling, knowing that she didn't have to do too much in that regard to keep us on the straight and narrow.
I love what you said about they were a great team, and it's so important. I mean, I'm in the same situation. I mean, my wife and I are a great team, and I think it's really important to recognize that teamwork, and really important to recognize that uh, building a place where, like you said, you and your brother could come home to was easy. That's not easy.
Right.
Like putting all the pieces in place, making sure that, everything is as it should be, does take teamwork. And because you're not necessarily working outside the home does not mean you're not working a ton inside the home to make that environment good for the whole family. So I think that's a great way to put it, in terms of that they were a great team. Uh, so what'd you spend your time doing as a kid?
Well, the good thing about growing up in a military family was that all the sports that we played were supported at the time by
Yeah, of
the
course.
military. So, you'd show up as a hockey player to the rink. My brother and I would walk in there. I remember these bins. There would be bins of hockey pants and bins of
Pads,
shoulder
shin
pads, and
yeah.
all you had to show up with was your helmet and your skates and your stick. So it was a bit of a culture shock when we moved to London, Ontario, and my mother and father were like I said, good people, but probably like me, not the best of planners. So they just assumed that in London, Ontario, which we weren't on a military base playing hockey in London, you were into the mainstream kids, and I remember we showed up with our stick and our skates and a helmet, and I remember walking up to the coach saying, "Where are the bins?" He said, "What are you talking about?"
The bins.
I said, "Yeah, there's supposed to be bins with hockey pants and shoulder pads," and he said, "Geez, I don't know what you're talking about." So Mom came out and talked to Dad. Dad ran as quick as he possibly could to the nearest sports store. And like I said, they didn't have a lot of money back then, but he bought Jason and I full gear, came in with the hockey bags, and we were able to actually get on the last 10 minutes of ice time. He moved that quick. Now, nothing fit, Chris. Nothing fit.
That's okay. I'm sure some of the stuff in the bins didn't fit either, so
Yeah,
probably used to it.
But that was, that was kind of a metaphor for everything else that was happening, right? Like they wanted to make sure that we had what we needed. So from that perspective, I don't really have too many excuses. I in growing up and and I expect that we'd get to this at some point, but I've made a lot of mistakes as it relates to, you know, um, taking a situation and not being calm about it, and I at times wonder where that developed, because you have good exposure to yes, my father, but absolutely a mentor, to somebody that I don't think I ever heard him raise his voice. So you go through your early years and you find that, yeah, there's temper tantrums, and you find that you're not interested in listening, and you're not the last one to speak, you're the first one to speak, and that somehow you're content with being embarrassed and being in the wrong. At some point, that has to change, and you start to look at others that seem to have a way about going about things that works, and it's right there. It's being exhibited every day, and you start to think, well, okay, well, it's not just that one person, but those three other people do this really well. And I don't have an explanation for why, over a period of time, you start learning from those individuals that have largely been within the policing community, only to learn that your dad was exhibiting these same traits the entire time. So I think for the first half of my career in policing, I just wasn't interested in growing up, and it just hit me one day that I need to do just that. Especially if you're looking at growing, whether it's your immediate team whether it's your organization, whether it's your community as a whole. At some point, do you want to be part of a group of people that want to see progress? Or do you want to be that person that isn't helping anybody?
Can you look back on your childhood and see maybe some moments of why you were more impatient? Was it you didn't like the moves? Were you hanging out with people that you were learning bad habits from? Like, can you?
No, it was nothing like that. I don't think I can fairly point the finger at anybody. This has always been something that I've had to get some self-awareness around. And I think the journey of having been quick to temper or you know making decisions that were in a vacuum, it gets to the point where you say to yourself, this isn't working. And I think there are a number of us that could be content to continue down that path. And you get your career in, and at the end of the day, maybe there's people showing up at your retirement party or not.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something else Dad said to me, he says, Gary, you'll know you're successful. If you want to talk about success, you'll know you're successful based on how many people show up at your retirement party. And I think that over the years, I've seen certain individuals specific to, our own police force that have taken the path that certainly I had been on in the beginning, and maybe when they're headed out the door, maybe there's fewer people. And not that that's the end all and be all of anything, but people talk about legacy. I have never been interested. If that works for people, fine, no problem. But all I've ever wanted, and maybe that has been the foundation of making these changes toward. And I know we're probably going to be talking about some of the things that have been tried in the organization that gets mass groups of people to start considering, is there a better approach? But at the end of the day, I think it just resonated with me that, I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I simply want to leave an organization where people say, well, Gary at least was a part of a group of people that wanted to see some progress. That's it, nothing more. And I think from that perspective, it allows you to, after you retire, walk down the street and you see an old colleague, and to not have him cross the street to avoid you, but instead to walk up to you and shake hands. Isn't that what perhaps people should be placing value on? So we're seeing now, even through our veterans, we're seeing a renewed approach to valuing and respecting the service that they provided, and listening to some of the suggestions, ideas that they may have that could advance our police force. But at the same time, we're listening to the brand new cadets that come in and give us their take when we ask them on what they think next steps might be. And when you get those different demographics, certainly in the range of service, you really start to paint a picture of maybe what we could be doing presently today, but how can we improve upon that for tomorrow?
Was policing something you always wanted to get into as a kid as you got further along in high school? Like, what were your options that you were thinking about?
Well, listen, how many kids don't want to be a fighter jet pilot? I mean, I think that was the plan. The grades weren't supporting that. I think
fair enough.
I think that's a fair statement. And you just start to think, well, what is it that I want to go into? It wasn't the military. I had tremendous value and respect for Dad and the service that he was engaged in. But for me, it was really about that immediate response to high-level situations. And I think that's where probably around 13, 14, it started to embed itself. And then certainly I had never considered anything else. So when the opportunity presented itself to apply to both the RCMP and municipal policing, I took the chance and was fortunate enough to get into the police academy and haven't looked back.
And that was Fredericton?
Yes.
Okay, so that was your first force you joined.
Yes.
So what was your initial impressions of, the initial police training, the transition from your family into an institution? What was that like?
Well, I think mom and dad, as you would hope. I think this is fair. Anybody would want this, that they were very proud of the desire to do that. Certainly getting accepted was a good day for the family, but I absolutely knew that this was what I wanted to do. It always struck, and please forgive me, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody that has an office job, because that's what I have now. But I just felt that sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 just wasn't who I was, and certainly not what I wanted to do. Policing provided the opportunity to be able to have something different every day. And that has a tremendous allure to it. I think that when you hear that radio squelch, and when dispatch is calling out multiple cars, and you're off to a call that you know relatively little about, but knowing that you're going with your team and others to be able to handle something that our hope is always that it's going to help somebody, or that we're going to be able to arrive at a situation, immediately identify who's the issue, and if a federal statute's been breached, then to arrest and to try to prevent a situation from getting worse. That still exists, I think, with a lot of folks, although I can't speak for anybody else. There's times when I'm sitting at my desk and I see the officers, get into their cars, the lights and sirens as they exit the back deck, and they get to their call for service. I there's a part of me that wishes I could go with them.
Yeah.
But there's also the part that knows that I can't.
I have a good friend who equates being in the Army to kind of like what you said, to waking up every morning with a new lottery ticket in your pocket. You're never sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exciting. And I don't think that anybody who's 17 or 18, I think the minority would be saying, well, I really want to do a desk job. Like the thing that I'm really passionate about is this, which requires me to be in an office. And that's great if that's what you're passionate about. But it's kind of cool that you were 13 and saying, this is what I'm interested in. And here you are all these years later, continuing to do what you had envisioned as a young teenager. Yeah. That's pretty cool. And I'm wondering, so what does basic training look like on a municipal force for the police?
Well, at the time, it was 1989, and you showed up in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. That's where the Atlantic Police Academy was at the time. And it was a very strict, military-esque structure. I remember day one, they huddled us into a room, and the instructors, or as we called them back then, the inspectors, walked into the room, and I've never seen a more serious group of people. It set the tone immediately, and we were in barracks. So you would be assigned your roommate. There was no sitting down and, figuring out who was right for who.
Yeah.
You were given your roommates,
yep.
And you were given your room, and you were told that this is how things are going to be moving forward. Your bed needed to be made a certain way. I mean, Chris, we would be doing everything we could to be right, and it didn't matter what you did. They were going to be making examples on a daily basis if you stepped out of line even 1 inch.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first couple of months, you weren't getting leave. You weren't able to go back home to Fredericton. You'd have to fill out your sheets, and keep in mind, this is at a time when there's no such thing as computers. There's no cell phones.
Yeah.
We had a typewriter with a broken letter, M, I think it was, and you had to fill out, your leave request. And we had to come up with ways to fill it out where there was no words that incorporated the letter M.
Sucks if your last name starts with M or has an M in it. It's like, well, I don't know who this is for.
Right.
This isn't your last name.
Yeah, Gary Forward. I was good. I was good to go.
Solid.
So, they would cancel. They would not approve your leave because of something minor. And of course, it's all to try to teach you what paramilitary existence is all about, and there is rank, there is reporting, there is direction that has to be followed. There is legislation in New Brunswick. It's the Brunswick Police Act that you must follow everything that's contained therein. But it got to the point where they stopped counseling or started canceling leave because beds weren't made properly. So the bulk of us stopped sleeping in them.
This sounds very familiar.
Yeah, my roommate and I, we would spread the towels out on the floor beside the beds. We would iron the corners every night, and it just got to the point where we just got used to sleeping on the floor because they would run inspection at any time they wanted, and if they came in and found that your bed, then you'd get your leave canceled. So I think from that perspective, it was a nice experience. And I know there's probably some people that might not agree with that, instructors raising their voices or yelling. It somewhat contradicts what I'm talking about. But the Atlantic Police Academy at that time was a very supportive, very good group of people that did listen. When it was time to do what they needed you to do, like I said before, that was non-negotiable. But it was a good experience, and to be honest, certainly other than the birth of my children or the marriage to my wife, it was arguably the best year I've had. And I think in today's world, those challenges can be different. Trying to maintain what a paramilitary organization, because if supervisors are giving direction and people aren't listening to that direction, then problems can erupt, and certainly officer safety and civilian safety can come into question. So we still have to have that measure. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying anything that these organizations aren't aware of, but I think what a lot of organizations and people within would agree with, that we have such a diverse set of personalities and things that people are fundamentally asking more questions these days about why they need to do something, or fundamental changes to existing policies or legislation. And again, I'm not saying anything that isn't already new, but those challenges have really come up to a level where organizations have to be doing it differently, have to be looking for ways to ensure that everybody in the organization is being heard, and that we do our homework, we do our research to, at least if the answer to something is a no, that it's not enough to simply say to folks, it's a no. Well, why? Well, because it's a no. Mm-hmm. That's the end of it. So I think with these modern day, especially police organizations, what does that balance look like between making sure that we are doing everything within the realm of federal statute enforcement, provincial statute enforcement, making sure that we are supportive, with all of the different challenges that come from this type of profession as it relates to PTSD, making sure that we have programs in place, supporting people, not vilifying them if they go out for an extended amount of time, because that's what they need in order to be healthy. So this is present every day. this thinking about what should we be doing. And I think what we found in Fredericton's stats as it relates to people out has not been great. But I think a lot of policing organizations would say that they too have struggled with that, especially in recent years. But over the last 6-7 months, we've been able to work with our partners and those professionals, those experts in varying fields of mental wellness and health, to allow people to go out on a good foot. We've removed any opportunity for people to be made to feel guilty, and in sometimes have been able to, through that upfront support and communication, have been able to not just minimize the amount of time that they're out, but negate it perhaps to begin with. So looking at that early intervention, and you can only get a temperature for the organization if we, as a management group, supervisors, as an entire organization, are taking the time to be people-orientated. By and large, and I can only speak for myself and what I'm seeing, what my experience has been with the Fredericton Police Force, but we've been largely task-orientated. And when you put the task first, the people can sometimes be left behind. So I think what we're trying to introduce now from a contemporary ideology is taking the opportunity to sit down and talk with people. And it doesn't take long to simply walk through the halls and ask people, what are you working on? We found that people are interested in spending 3 hours talking about that. They simply let you know what's going on. And from that perspective, you can get a better understanding, not only what's taking place in your organization, but a better feel as to where people are at from a health perspective. And we found it to be invaluable.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite expressions is presence indicates interest. So just being there shows people that you actually care and you want to hear from them. And as you say, we're not talking about massive investments of time, but it is definitely something that you have to be very deliberate about in connecting with people. When you finished up your training, you returned to Fredericton so now you're fully qualified.
Yeah.
So what does life look like as a new police officer on the force, and what year was that?
Well, so I would have joined the academy would have graduated us about November 1989. So then starts mass panic about trying to get a job somewhere because you pay.
Okay.
So
how's it? Okay, I assume that you had been that the Fredericton Police Force had been okay. Gary, you're with us. They send you to the college, and then you go back. But you get accepted to the college, and now kind of like a university. Like you finish your degree, your education, your training, and now you have to find work.
That's what's in place now, and it only took us 34 years to get there, but that's what's in place now. So we have sponsorship program where you're guaranteed a job. You still have to, if you're going to Holland College or the Atlanta Police Academy, you still pay your tuition, but you're guaranteed a job, provided you get through the program. You graduate, certainly you're a cadet in good standing, then there's a job waiting for you. But no, there was no sponsorship. Academy tuition at the time was $17,500. It's roughly about $35,000 now to go through the academy. And it was one of those things where you want to stay in New Brunswick, your friends and your family are there, so you were applying to the St. John Police Force or the Miramichi Police Force or the Fredericton Police Force. And around late December, we had interviews. And it was, without question, the most stressful interview of my entire life. There was a board of senior Fredericton Police Force. Chief Matt Carlisle had just retired from the RCMP with about 20 plus years service, and ended up being the longest serving chief of police in Fredericton Police Force history at about 25 years. He served as the chief. So he had quite a long career, 45 plus years in policing. And he was the quintessential chief of police, the deep voice, the eyebrow raised, but he also had a real good heart and a soft side to him that, geez, if you came to work and did your job, it didn't matter what issues you might have, what complaints came in, he had your back. So, it was comfortable. But we also had inspectors and later superintendents too. So I'll tell you a very quick story, and I'll leave the names out of it. But I was off duty. I don't think I had any more than 2 or 3 months service. I think I'd just gotten off of my being with my field trainer. So a buddy and I go to play pool one night, and it's probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. We're driving home, and a vehicle comes through the intersection. It's a red light, and smashes into the back of a taxi cab. So again, there's no cell phones or anything at the time, and I tell my buddy who's driving, I said, go to the fire station, which is right at the corner there, and call 911, and because the car started to take off, it went into reverse down the street. And so I got out and started running for no other reason, just to get a license plate. And at the time in New Brunswick, they had front and back license plates, obviously. But it drove backwards into a parking lot and hit a couple of cars in the parking lot. Just in time for me to run down and be in front of it. I was able to get the plate, and to make a long story short, the driver took off. But I got a good look at the driver, and I remember the driver, well, because I had seen him at the police force, and it was a high-ranking member of the police force. So. Called in the plate through the police showed up. They checked the plate. It come back to belonging to the Fredericton Police Force, and I was called in about a half hour later because the individual driving, there was a police radio in it. The sergeant at the time had called the individual, and he turned himself in. So I had to go in and identify. So as a young recruit, just getting a job at the Fredericton Police Force, I wondered, what is my future? And that really ramped up a number of levels when I went in and identified the individual. That was not a comfortable start to a profession. But the organization handled it as anyone would hope they did. There was charges, there was demotions, there was different programs that the individual went into, and as a result, we were able to get past that. But I'll tell you, Chris, for a couple of weeks, I knew well where the unemployment office was, because you're thinking, what is going to be the response. So it didn't start out good, and you can get all the pats on the back about doing your job. You still wonder if you haven't done something that is going to, put you behind the 8 ball for the rest of your career. But it never has done that. The opportunities have always been there. And my hope and sense is that opportunities for everybody have been there, but I don't think that's true. And I think there, again, is what we have to do to get better in these organizations, is to make sure that we're doing everything we can, that regardless of who joins the police force, has the same opportunities as everybody else. And I think that is a main pillar of what the Fredericton Police Force is trying to establish right now.
I really like this story, and it makes me think about different times in my career, about how when I felt that I was doing the right thing, but it still felt really uncomfortable. And I don't know why that is. Like, what? Clearly, you're doing the right thing. I'm sure you could go back to the stated ethics, values, code of conduct at the Fredericton Police Force at the time and point to all sorts of things about how your actions perfectly aligned to that, yet still you are concerned.
Yeah.
I look at that and I go, why do we feel that way when we have to, when we're doing the right thing, when we're upholding and living ethics and values, and yet it's uncomfortable?
Well, I think even today, when you look at the level of scrutiny that police officers are under with social media, and you have the advent of things like Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, where that type of inexcusable, tragic behavior and outcome is not isolated in that community. It's if you're wearing a uniform, I would suggest at the time and shortly thereafter, and for an extended period of time, I suppose after what happened, it didn't matter if you wore a U.S. uniform or a Canadian uniform, and probably most likely in many other countries where police officers were being painted with that same brush. Now, have police officers from time to time engaged in criminal conduct and inexcusable behavior? The answer to that is yes. But I think everybody knows that the majority of police officers arrive at work every day to deal with difficult situations under constant risk and threat of complaint, regardless of good intentions or good faith. You and I could go to work every day, pull over vehicles, and think we've done everything right, everything within the framework of legislation and policy. And yet, it doesn't negate a complaint. That can be an extensive burden and source of stress for officers. Yet, they continue to come to work to do that. So even I think with the amount of people out there where there is you don't need credentials any longer. You don't need permission. If you belong to a social media platform, you're entitled to your opinion, and that opinion, whether it is accurate or misinformation, can be shared. And people are left with the option to either accept other people's views of things or not. And regrettably, unfortunately, I think, when you have protests to defund the police, we live in a society where I don't think we've evolved to the point where policing can exist. As long as crime is being committed, as long as victims are being harassed, assaulted, stolen from, there will always be that need for that type of response. And I think we would all suggest and agree that we hope to get to that point in the future where maybe policing to the level that we have right now isn't needed. But we are, especially in light of some of the things that are taking place globally right now, I think the need for policing and the need for good people to enter the profession so that we can provide the best public safety service we can is absolutely essential.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I cannot think of a job that is more difficult on a daily basis than policing your community. And especially, as you've said, Gary, that, when this incident happened where this guy from the Fredericton Police Force rammed to the back of another one, and as a young guy, you had to report that and deal with that. And as you said, the social media digital age now, I mean, we have built a society that wants to litigate everything.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to accept responsibility. People want to find loopholes. And I can't imagine how challenging that is policing. I mean, my wife and I were down visiting our daughter at university, and we were we were in a parking lot and local police pulled over somebody. And this guy got out of the car and gave them, and by all accounts, from listening to it, it sounded like it was a pretty simple traffic violation. But this guy gave them this guy no end of grief, and he was so polite and so professional. And the guy who was pulled over, demanded to speak to the shift supervisor. No problem, sir. Called the shift supervisor. Boss comes out. So the two of them are sitting there, very non-confrontational, just listening. And I thought, oh, that is, to do that day in and day out. I mean, that's a big lift, without a doubt. So I mean, my hat's off to anybody who's policing, because in my estimation, it's definitely the sort of day in, day out, one of the most challenging things you can do with your life, but also one of the most important things you can do to serve your community. Now, so as you evolved, as you got more experience, I mean, how did your sort of views of policing change? How did, from that sort of initial year in Fredericton, I mean, where did you see yourself going? Were you enjoying your career? Were there aspects about you didn't like? Were there things that you maybe had aspirations to do? Like, what was when you got into the profession?
I think fairly, and I didn't know how I would approach this, but I've had 5 mentors in my career, 3 of which would represent, what a good mentor should be. 2 mentors taught me what not to do. And I think in the exposure and watching and learning from what all 5 were doing at different intervals and different stages of my career, you learn more from the 2 mentors who are demonstrating what not to do. Now, I think it's fair to state that they believe that they were doing the right thing. But when you see the outcomes, when you see the stresses, when you see the police force morale not where it needs to be, and decisions made in a vacuum, and the erosion of trust, I think you start to ask yourself, what level of this am I responsible for? And I've already said I've made all kinds of mistakes. I do not think that I was part of the organization that was helping. So I think that switch gets flipped, where you start to say, okay, what path do I need to take to be better? And what goes along with that. So the active listening, the communication, staying in the adult, and limiting where you can, not going into the parental or the child. Like your example with the 2 officers. I mean, the advent of body-worn camera technology in itself was an absolute change to how police officers behave and interact with the community. When you know you're on camera, I think you're on your best behavior. So it has helped guide the best of us to, perhaps different approaches. Similarly, when police officers let the community, our clients, know that they're on camera, we have seen pockets of people, perhaps behaving a little bit better knowing that they're on camera. There's a few that don't care, clearly. Yeah. But, so I think that, to your question, you say, well, how can I be more involved without running the show? How can I be more involved to get people to have more open, honest conversations, being respectful, but sitting down and being able to approach something else? And I apologize for keep saying this, but Dad always said to me, says, Gary, don't lie to people. There's no benefit to it. There really isn't. If you're trying to avoid something by lying to somebody or not taking accountability for it, it'll just come back to get you. And if that one particular episode doesn't, the next one will. So he says, tell people the truth. They might be mad at you, but at least your credibility and your reputation stays intact.
Yeah.
Lie to people, not only when they find out, not only will they be mad, but your credibility and reputation is gone. So you start to find different columns of where you would like to be based on what you're seeing from your mentors, others around you. And, if Bill and Sue come in one day and they're not mentors, but they have an approach to something that you like, and you learning from that is part and parcel of the growth and development over a period of time. So you find yourself learning from everybody when they have done something that works well or works poorly. So, whether it's good or bad, you're learning from it. So naturally, the move to start to apply for rank. And in the Fredericton Police Force, you go through your different classifications, 4th to 1st class as a constable, and your next rank is corporal, then sergeant, which those two ranks are looking after generally platoons, or they will be heading up major crime teams or integrated community services teams, then to staff sergeant, then to in the Fredericton Police Force inspector. We did at a time have a superintendent rank. We don't have that any longer. We're not using it, and then to deputy chief, and then ultimately to chief. So it wasn't my frustration about not getting the things I wanted. I think the reason to write for promotion is so you can get yourself in a position not to tell people what to do, but to be a facilitator that allows others to share their input in a way that we can hear it, get the dialogue going, and again, not to repeat myself, but then toward option development. And the higher you're able to go in the organization, it's all for naught if your deputy or your chief of police is somebody that still makes decisions in a vacuum.
Right.
So I think the only option, and not that I intended it this way, and I'm not going to suggest and say that I never had my eye on being a chief of police, but for a long period of time, I stopped worrying about rank. Be the help. Be that person in a group of people that is doing your collective best to invite that input, to invite that communication, to build those relationships, those partnerships, to remove negativity. I don't have a negative thing to say about anybody these days. I find no value in it. There's no strategic outcome to it. We can talk about difficult challenges, but again, what are the options toward resolve? That is ultimately what it, otherwise it's just gossip.
Now, you'd mentioned earlier, Gary, about how you weren't always the person that maybe you'd hoped you would be. And I'm wondering if there was a moment where you went, like, I don't like how I am in certain ways, or if there was a mentor or a leader who came in and just sort of was able to help you understand where you needed to change to be better.
Yeah, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. My probably the biggest influence in my life has been Mamie Murray. Mamie was a sergeant with the Fredericton Police Force. She left the service with, I believe, 18 years service, and to start her own business. And she was a polygraphist, a widely well-respected individual in the organization, and had always never forced views, had always allowed you to kind of see what was the light and then to make your way to it.
You say polygraphist. Is that polygraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. She was our polygraphist for a number of years.
That's fascinating that the person who had the biggest influence was somebody who was responsible for the assessment of truth.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say Mamie was irreverent, but she had a way of basically, she was honest. She would tell you the sober truth. And I think the value in, how many of us, when we're sitting across the dinner from friends or significant loved ones, refuse to tell people that there's food in their teeth, or there's and because we don't want to embarrass them, we don't want to. Yet we are somehow content with allowing them to go through the entire dinner with a piece of spinach in there,
being embarrassed.
So Dad would say, "What's the value in that?" And again, they might be embarrassed or not be happy with you for telling the truth about it. But at some point, they start to appreciate the fact that you did.
Mm-hmm.
So Mamie was very much that type of person, and still is. I mean, she's a remarkable individual, and there are many of us that have benefited from exposure to how Mamie approached things. So I think really, Chris, it just hit me one day that there's a different path. And Mamie never came out and said, "You're on the wrong one." But her approach was enough. And maybe it was her intent the entire time. Maybe it was that she needed me to figure it out. I mean, I had to want it.
Mm.
And I think in and around 2003, 2004, it was time for me to smarten up. And I just started paying attention to her and a number of other people. And then you start to see the benefit of maintaining an approach where it's option orientated, where it's inclusive, where you value partnerships. I'm proud to say that the New Brunswick Association Chiefs of Police, all 9 municipal police forces, are so close, so tight knit. So is the RCMP with those 9 municipal police forces. And so is Justice and Public Safety. And I'll back up as I try to do everything I say. We are one of very few provinces that have an integrated team called the Integrated Enforcement Unit, or the IEU. Their mandate is illicit drugs and firearms. And when you think about the organized crime hold that different groups have in Canada, well, New Brunswick is no different. So we have 7 teams in and around the province that is operated by the municipalities, where we have that integration of RCMP officer, Justice and Public Safety officer, and they have been extraordinarily successful in the amount of drugs and firearms that they've seized over the last 4 years and since inception. That was not an easy thing to land, and would not have been possible if you didn't have incredible respect and adoration for the partnerships in place. I have no time. This is probably where my patience, I'm still trying to grow this facet of my patience if somebody was to come in and say something negative about one of our partners. And I'll back that up too. If you have something bad happen in the city of Fredericton, where it's protracted, or the level of what's taking place needs multiple law enforcement entities to respond to it, I can tell you that within 1 minute, 8 other, we're 9 total, 8 other municipal police forces would be rolling every one of their officers, staff, equipment, logistics. The RCMP would be there within probably a half hour, because their HQ is right within Fredericton. Justice and Public Safety officers would be right there. And because we are doing road checks together, that we're integrated with the IEUs that I spoke about, where we're having provincial initiatives like forensic firearms or explosive disposal, where our ERT teams are training together, we all feel much better. Never entirely comfortable, but much better about our ability to handle the bulk of situations that come before us. And I think every municipal chief, the CO of the RCMP, Matko Sirotic, our president, Bob Bruce in St. John, there's no confusion about the commitment that we have. And I can tell you that was all built because good people sat down, parked their ego at the door, and asked one question: what can we do better tomorrow than we're doing today? Mm-hmm. And from that grew what I think is arguably one of the best partnerships in the country.
You left the Fredericton Police Force at a certain point, did you not?
I did.
And why did you leave?
I think in 2016, I had 27 years service, and I state this openly and honestly. I was not seeing the police force headed in a direction that I could fundamentally support. And this is on me, nobody else. If you can't support your organization, then you probably need to, from a self-awareness perspective, come to two conclusions. What do I need to support? And how do I get around that? How can I feel better about supporting actions and things that I don't fundamentally agree with? Mm-hmm. I think there's a danger to accepting mediocrity or accepting issues that you know are being problematic. So the other thing you can do is decide, well, maybe maybe I'm part and parcel of the problem, and maybe the best thing I can do for my organization is to find a different path to contribute in ways that I can feel better about. And that's exactly what I did. And coincidentally, at the time that I was starting to think about this, Justice of Public Safety New Brunswick created a unit that had a singular mandate to go after contraband tobacco that eventually, over its 4-year period of existence, evolved into taking on drugs and other commodities. So in partnership with, again, the aforementioned municipalities and the RCMP, through government budgets, the unit folds, and coincidentally, again, at the opportunity to join the Woodstock Police Force as its chief came up, and I spent 5 years and 2 days doing that. And then in September of 2024, the opportunity to join the Fredericton Police Force as the chief there materialized, and I was happy to come home.
So I got a couple questions out of that. So maybe the first one, I'm interested about the provincial task force or unit that you're part of. Now, in New Brunswick, what are some of the biggest challenges that the province is facing in terms of criminal activity? Is it look different in any ways than a lot of the other provinces or territories? Is there something unique, or is it quite similar?
No, I would say, to be fair, New Brunswick has, the same issues, the same organized crime groups, but to be fair, operating perhaps at a lower level than what Ontario might be experiencing, or Quebec. I think that's fair. But if you have drugs that have graduated from, cocaine to meth, to crystal meth, to fentanyl, to carfentanil, where you have this nonstop intent to create an increasingly highly addictive drug that is at the same time incredibly inexpensive. And the trifecta is that it is available everywhere. That is going to introduce an epidemic into your community. So New Brunswick has responded in ways that I think are, at minimum, a step towards understanding who's who in the zoo as it relates to the organized crime groups or individuals through those 7 integrated enforcement units. The sharing of intelligence and information that's taking place in New Brunswick is where it needs to be, but we're always looking ways to improve upon it. And the reason for that is that, I don't think anybody has ever suggested that cocaine is produced in Canada. I'm pretty sure it's not. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. It's produced in South America and neighboring
foreign
countries.
Lands that are far warmer than ours. Yes.
So the question remains: well, how's it getting to Fredericton, New Brunswick? It by default must travel through multiple jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be lost on anybody, but the organized crime groups, they have a high level of effective communication with one another. Clearly, to transport something from a South American or Central American country up through into Canada is going to take some planning, some communication. So one has to question, if you're an organization that doesn't play well with others in the sandbox, if you're keeping your intelligence, your information tight to your chest, and product is flowing into your community, then I hope people understand that this is the truth, that you're not doing the job that you need to be doing. Hence the value of partnerships and making sure that every opportunity to do better should be an ever-present question. So I don't mean to jump all over the place, but the opportunity for me to do that with Justice and Public Safety, to be a unit that was able to fundamentally tackle what has been in New Brunswick is a major issue, and that is the black market tobacco. So, you have taxes associated to the commodity, both provincial and federal taxes, and you have communities that are in effect bringing into Canada raw leaf tobacco. They have production facilities predominantly in Quebec, in Ontario, and they are producing with each one of these facilities about 10,000 cigarettes a minute.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I have to be careful going down this path because I could really talk about it for a long period of time. It's so lucrative that even organized crime groups are weighing the common sense of, do we deal in cocaine or crystal meth, for which if we get caught, there's going to be some significant consequences and repercussions to that. But with tobacco, if you get caught, depending on which province you're in, it's a fine. And essentially, I think some of I want to be careful about how I put this, but some of the ignorance about just how detrimental this can be, both from a health perspective and a black market perspective, is lost on many professionals. So if you and I go and pick up a case of tobacco which contains 10,000 cigarettes. And at the lowest level, there's baggies in each one of these boxes, and they contain 200 cigarettes each. So you can get that product, at least back when I was on the team, you can get that product for anywhere between $300 and $450 a box. But you can turn around and sell that for about $1,500 to $1,700. So your level of profit margin on it is massive. So you do have a lot of organized crime groups that are now starting to get into the production and sales of this. Now I'll put this in perspective. Legalize marijuana. What prevents one of those production facilities from turning off one of their turbines that was making 10,000 cigarettes roughly a minute, and they start putting in raw leaf bud marijuana? What product can they make at an expedited rate, and set up for sale? So we are seeing now the outcome, the evidence of that, where you're seeing a lot of unlicensed locations that are popping up in different communities, and are allowed to sell tobacco and marijuana at a reduced rate that is void of any taxes or paperwork that a legitimate business might need to operate.
I'm genuinely surprised by the tobacco thing, and maybe it's because I have a false assumption that there is less smokers these days, but obviously the production rate of 10,000 a minute coming out of these factories, and the fact that provinces are focusing on it clearly means that there is a continued demand signal for tobacco, for cigarettes, which I thought had diminished in the modern age, but clearly not.
It's I don't think the numbers are really there to suggest it's headed in one way or another. In fact, a lot of these organized crime groups or those responsible for the production are introducing flavors into, so you can get, cigarillos with a blueberry flavor or chocolate flavor. So what's the reason for that? Is to target an entire new demographic, that new generation of youth that they can get addicted to the product and then become a lifelong client. So this is something that I think in New Brunswick are part and parcel of our ongoing issues that we're dealing with. We are just as concerned as any other policing organization would be across the country as to the safety of our communities moving forward. I mean, if you have an opioid epidemic, I know different provinces, I won't talk about which provinces, but we all know that there's been provinces that have experimented with, tried different ways to deal with the addiction issues that are exacerbated by now the socioeconomic of living rough and mental health. Some individuals that are experiencing, all three. So I think moving forward, not just New Brunswick, but Canada is becoming ever reliant on our ability to work better together. And all we can do in New Brunswick is try to do our best to be part and parcel of that larger initiative, but also to do our best to lead by example by having the partnerships and the programs that we have in place right now.
Speaking of leading by example, my other question about your move away from Fredericton and then the provincial task force and then Woodstock Woodstock was your first opportunity to be the top cop. So what was that like? How was that different from leading in different ways when you were in Fredericton?
Well, I think, and not that Fredericton is any type of a I mean, Fredericton right now's population is about 75,000 people. I think with the census agglomeration throughout Monday to Friday, when outlying areas come in, probably gets up closer to that six-figure mark. But ultimately, I think comparatively to other police forces across Canada, it would be a smaller police force. Woodstock is at the time that I joined it had 16 members. So the challenge, even though I'm coming from not a large police force, but comparative to Woodstock, Fredericton was certainly a bigger. So you really start to get lessons in a small town policing sort of approach, and having coffee with citizens and listening to mayor and council about the things that are important might not be a massive issue in Fredericton. But the main lesson that I got from all of this is that it didn't matter how small the issue was. It needed its due diligence. It needed to be landed. And what Woodstock taught me was don't dismiss anything. In fact, don't delay it. Deal with it. You don't have to solve people's problems, but at minimum, you should take the time to look at what the issue is and what you need to do to resolve it. There's a saying out there that, if you're sitting in front of a board of inquiry, the three questions are always going to be, what did you know? When did you know? What did you do about it? And this has lived in the back of my head and pops out to the front of my head about 42 times a day.
Right.
So I think that's where I really learned that the importance of sitting down and working with others, doing your due diligence, was ultimately going to allow you to sit in front of not just a board of inquiry, but a client, a victim. When they look at you and say, what did you do? I simply ask the officers and staff to have an answer to that. It might not be the one that they hear, but at minimum, you should be able to have an answer to that. So I think over 5 years and 2 days, that is a daily lesson. And then you start to experiment with the officers to grow that ideology of what you're seeing and what you're trying to build to those officers. I can tell you right now that Woodstock Police Force it has strength at every level. It wouldn't matter if you're a brand new cadet there or if you're the current chief of police. They're talking to each other, they're talking to their partners, their stakeholders, they're getting the guidance that they need, and they're planning correctly. That police force is about to regionalize over the next 3 years.
What does that mean?
It's going from 15 square kilometer coverage to 532.
Okay, yeah.
So they are taking on a substantial geographical increase.
So what's driven that change?
The New Brunswick government has brought forth local governance reform. There's a number of municipal police forces working in consultation and partnership with the RCMP to take over additional territory.
Okay.
Fredericton is taking over a bit more territory, and we're going to be also taking over the airport, which is outside our current jurisdictional boundaries. But we're going to be taking that over in one of the main highway stretches there. And I think this is the province's approach to, efficiencies. It's they're making sure that contract policing it comes to a conclusion, I think 2032. So the province is weighing what their options might be moving forward, and when that happens, whether the contract with the RCMP is renewed or, if they have other options to pursue at that time. But I think undoubtedly a piece of that, and this is just my sense, my guess, is that the municipal police forces in New Brunswick will be asked to take on additional territory where and when possible to do so.
Mm. Okay. Now, 5 years and 2 days?
Yeah.
In Woodstock?
Yes.
So 5 years and 2 days, you get a chance to come back to Fredericton as the chief. Now, I think like any new leader who comes into an organization, right, they have a vision. They want to probably approach that in different ways. Some people are quite bullish and they go in and they just start changing things. Others want to sit back and sort of observe and see what's working. So what was your approach to returning to Fredericton and taking over that role?
Well, I think, to be fair, and if this surprises anybody, I'm not sure who they would be if they had some understanding of the police force. But again, openly and honestly, the organization was facing different challenges with recruitment, retention, pension issues. We're just now getting into a collective agreement bargaining. And whether real or perceived, the morale of the organization was starting to be impacted. And that's not to say that people present or predecessors weren't doing the job. I just believe that the paramilitary structure, the autocratic dictatorial approach that police forces traditionally have been known to employ needs to be looked at. I think the minimal information that I may have had coming into the organization was not to focus on the problems that were present, but on the renewed approach that I've spoken about, that ideology to sit with everybody in the organization, not to get into a conversation about blame, but to simply ask one question. And I did this within the first 4 months. I had to meet with about 165, 170 staff, officers and admin, and to simply ask one question of everybody. What do you like about what we're doing right now? But what do you think we need to improve upon and build for tomorrow? And from that perspective, you really remove the negativity. You get people speaking honestly and openly about what they like. This is good. And I've said this, everybody that came before us, I've made sure that I've mentioned this to every officer and civilian that I've met with. Before I ask the question I'm about to ask, I want you to look at the brick in the wall. I want you to look at the car on the back deck. I want you to see the officer and the equipment that they have, the body-worn camera technology, the computers, and realize that was built by everybody that came before us. And from that perspective, we should be grateful. So everybody that has been here at some point in time has done something to advance us to our present day. Our jobs while we're here is to advance it further, to build upon what they've done, so that others that come after us can have that same opportunity. And if that's our approach, if past, present, and future can embrace that approach, then I think we're headed in the right path. So with that context, with that understanding, what is it you think that we're doing well, and what do you think we can build upon tomorrow? So you remove the negativity out of the discussion, and people are now focused. And again, to back that up, traditionally, the organization chart, changes to it, new sections, removing sections, has been left to the senior management team. Not this time. We took it in its barest form and introduced it to all of the teams. So the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants, the corporals met with their platoons, or they met with their major crime. The staff sergeants met with the non-commissioned officers. The inspectors met with the staff sergeants to gather input on what do you like about our current organizational chart, but what can we add to? What do we need moving forward? Over a 6-week period of time, we built an organizational chart that the SMT has already admitted, that I admit we never would have come up with.
What's the SMT?
The senior management team.
Okay. So
we would have missed things. And from that perspective, what we now have is something that, and I'm not suggesting this is new. I expect there's been a great number of organizations and teams that have been doing this for years. I'm speaking specifically to Fredericton. So, and I expect even in Fredericton, there's been some aspect of this, but this has fundamentally taken some of the challenges that we were experiencing in Fredericton, and we've pivoted. We've turned a corner where the timely communication. And that's another thing that we did. I said to the senior management group, anything that we're working on, we're going to tell the rank and file and the admin. We're going to have regular meetings. There's always a senior management team member that joins the platoons at 7 in the morning to not only hear their briefing and what they're up against, but to share information that we have so that they can provide us feedback back. When we introduced the draft organizational chart in its near completion, not one complaint, not one question. Everybody was up to speed on it. The executive from the union was involved in this as well, and we've removed any opportunity for an incorrect or harmful narrative. We have removed the need for people to sit in offices and assume or guess as to what's taking place.
Right.
And because of that, I would suggest that our morale is headed in a direction that we can all be happy and proud of. But we still have work to do. We still have path to travel. And but I'm comfortable, never confident, but I'm comfortable that this is a group of people that definitely want to see the future that we all intend.
Yeah, those things feed one another. So when you reduce uncertainty by communicating and listening, you build trust, which then helps you to run the organization better and better and keeps people in, and the word of mouth and the reputation then draws more people in for recruiting. So yeah, I think all of those things are really foundational to building out an organization. And then when you want to change something, because you have that established, that people know that their voice is going to be heard, and then they're going to trust you to make a good decision for the future. Yeah, you really start to iron out a lot of the wrinkles in organizations by taking that approach. Now, when you look to the future, and I don't know if the question is about the future of policing writ large or the future of policing in Fredericton, I mean, where do you see it going? Because, like you said, you might be proud of where you are, but you're not satisfied. And I think that's always a good way to be, is always looking to the future of seeing, trying to look around corners and see what's coming your way. How do you see things evolving?
Well, I think, taking the question and perhaps because I think it can be answered by some of the socioeconomic challenges that Fredericton and other municipalities continue to face. I think with organized crime, the problem that they're creating with their involvement in different things. So, from a public safety perspective, I think we take our time to look at trends. I think that we have to have a bit of a crystal ball insofar as what can we plan for 2026 that we think is going to build and get more problematic, or is there something that we've been dealing with that we no longer have to focus on in order to apply resources to a different challenge? But that in itself is probably an in-depth conversation to have. But I think I take your question to mean, as it relates to where do we see the future of the Fredericton Police Force as it relates to, our organizational structure, the officers within it, the professionalism, advanced technology. Like if I said to you, AI, artificial intelligence, and its expedited growth into all things is and should be on the radar for every organization, every individual. We've seen certain frauds perpetrated already that are beyond what any of us thought could have been possible. Even some of these social media things where you've got well-known sports athletes during a playoff run that are speaking about a fellow player on the other team, and it's made up because there's just no way. Yet there is the sports figure, and it's his voice, and there you go. And there would be a percentage of the population that might not ask themselves the question, is that real or not? Mm. So we're seeing that level. But I think as it relates to the organization itself, I think about contract policing and its potential conclusion at 2032. I think about regionalization. Does the Fredericton Police Force go from 126 sworn members to 300 members over the span of the next 5 to 8 years because of potential for regionalization? Now, I don't have the answers to that, but I'm feeling increasingly better about our future, knowing that I'm not the one that's thinking about it alone. We have everybody in the organization, and as we continue to build our police force and how we go about things, and not to mention the fact that we have this thing that's going on day to day. What's it called? Right, crime. So we have that thing always going on, and then the response to that is huge. So now we have to think about what things are going to look like in the future. Well, yes, I'm sorry, that's a responsibility that the police forces have as well. So I think all of this ties into, that area where we cannot afford to be lackadaisical or assume that everything's going to be all right. And I'm not signaling any type of flag or to panic. I just think it's better understood. The issues coming are better understood. They could be better planned for. The organization could be in a better place, provided we talk to each other, provided that we, and please, I'm hoping nobody dismisses that as a given. I can tell you right now, anybody listening to this podcast is going to be able to fairly come to the conclusion that even if you're in an organization that does it well, you still have pockets of people and opportunities that are being missed out on. So I listen. I'll leave you with one last thing that Dad said to me, and it wasn't his quote, but we can't let perfection be the enemy of good. And I find a lot of times organizations are looking for that perfect response. It's a perfect ops plan for an ERD team to go. And, I spent 14 years on the emergency response team, and I don't think I've ever had an ops plan that went to the plan. I don't think that ever happened. There were nuances. You try to kick in the front door, and it's bolted to a level that your source failed to communicate, so you're forced to enter into a different way. So I'm not suggesting that there's perfect out there, but if we can get it good, well, you know what? That's pretty good, and I think that's where the mindset is right now. Let's talk to each other. Let's figure it out together, and from that perspective, I hope the future doesn't have too many surprises for us, that we're not going to be able to say, well, we kind of saw this coming, and we're ready for it.
Chief Gary Forward, Fredericton Police, thank you so much for your time. Great to meet you in person. And I very much enjoyed this conversation. I think, as I said earlier, policing is a incredibly difficult profession. So thank you for your service. Thank you for what you and your team do every day. And thanks for being one of our Northern Sentinels.
It was a real pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gary Forward. Please subscribe to The Greater Good on Substack to get this and other content to help you, citizen, better. Thanks for listening, and goodbye until next time.